Welcome to the Rock and Roll Show podcast. I'm your host, Alex Gadd, and I've had conversations like we have on the podcast countless times when meeting new people, both personally and professionally. Among music fans, it allows us to get to know and understand one another in a way that's much more than just superficial. And hey, it's just fun swapping stories about shows that we've seen. Today, we're lucky to have as our guest Russell Kahn. Russ is the Chief Content Officer at News-O-Matic, an online learning platform for kindergarten through 8th grade students whose mission is to spark kids' curiosity and to inspire educators to transform their teaching. Russ is also an old friend and a passionate music fan and concert goer. I'm looking forward to a wide-ranging conversation, so without further ado, Russ, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Yeah, really excited to talk with you. You and I have seen a couple of concerts together. In fact, we met at a concert, although I did meet you when you were a little kid and we didn't know one another. But we met for the first time November 13th, 2002. It's drilled into my memory. Bob Dylan at Madison Square Garden. I was hanging out with my aunt. You were with friends. And we met for the first time. A momentous occasion. We've since hung out at other shows. I remember you two at MetLife Stadium in 2017. We saw Dylan together at the Beacon in 2018. And also, hey, we've been in the same rotisserie baseball league for the last 21 years, but maybe that's a topic for a different podcast.
Look forward to that one too.
All right, let's start with just some context. How did you get into music? Where were your initial musical influences? Where did they come from?
That's a good question because music was not playing in my childhood home. It wasn't like it was just constantly on in the background. So I clearly had to seek it out. I'm trying to think of how it came to me, but I can tell you that when I was, 11, 12, 13 years old, I would spend my allowance on a new CD. And that was, every week I would just go to the store and pick out something new, and I just got lost in it. Certainly I had an older brother who probably helped the cause. But I can't tell you if there was like a single moment or experience as a kid that got me into this lifelong path that I'm on, but I'm grateful for it.
Right on. So about how many concerts have you seen? I'm not looking for a specific number, just roundabout so we can start with some context.
Yeah, I'm sorry I haven't kept a diligent count. I would have liked to look back on that, but I would say we are at about 1,000, probably a little bit more at this point if you're counting, club shows and whatnot. There's definitely, a dozen acts that I've seen 20 or more times. So I think 1,000 is a good, fair number to go with.
And what act have you seen the most?
You promise not to judge?
No, not at all.
I did a bunch of tours with Phish from 1994 through the early aughts, and I think my last show was number 200.
Wow, that is amazing. Yeah, I spent time with Phish as well, but only in New York. I didn't do a lot of touring with them. Maybe as far as I went was Camden, New Jersey or Burlington, but not further than that. And I've only seen them 30 something times altogether. So 200 is really something. All right, let's go back to the beginning. So you're buying CDs, you're a kid, you're listening to your brother's music maybe, but not getting a lot of influence from your parents. What was your first concert?
So I guess I was always obsessed with Paul Simon. That was, the sounds of Graceland and just sort of permeated my universe. And he was playing at Madison Square Garden. It was not the Graceland tour. It was the next one, Rhythm of the Saints. I think it was, I want to say 89, maybe 90. And so MSG, right where I met you about 28 years ago, that's where my journey began.
And how old were you at the time?
I want to say 13, I think was the age, yeah.
Who'd you go with?
I went with my mom.
My first concert was not with my mom, but with my aunt, as you won't be surprised knowing my aunt as you do. But I saw a number of my first concerts with my mom because I was too young to see concerts and get myself there. So I get that. That's not a problem for me at all. So Madison Square Garden, Paul Simon, Rhythm of the Saints. Do you remember how much the ticket price was?
I didn't buy it.
No, fair point.
So
fair point.
That was irrelevant. I should probably look that up, but my guess is it'll be, $20, $25, maybe less, maybe 15. Yeah. It is funny to see.
Just curious.
It is funny to see those old stubs and realize how much cheaper things cost back then.
Right, my first show well, second show was Springsteen at the Garden in 1980, and it was $12.50. Compare that to
Wow.
$800 the last time he played there, and it's quite something. Do you have any memories, specific memories of that show? What about that show stuck with you?
So I can tell you a story from that show that I didn't remember from when I was there, but my mom loves to tell this story. I'm 13 years old, and my mom decided she would test me. So
Oh,
some
lord.
folks were smoking something nearby as it's a common experience at a concert. And I have no recollection of this happening, but my mom apparently said, "Hmm, what's that smell? What's that weird smell?" And I apparently looked to her and just said, "Duh, it's weed. Pot, mom, come on." And so I either passed the test or I failed the test. But either way,
That has never been shared with you? She never shared with you which way that went?
I think she was disappointed. So I guess I failed the test. But I can, that's her favorite story. And for me, I still remember his incredible percussion player, especially for the song from Rhythm of the Saints, Obvious Child. It just this
Mhm.
incredible
Great
African
song.
drumming. And there's this sort of this pause in it in the song, and then this drummer comes in. And I still remember that moment.
Mm. I love those kinds of memories because those are such, strong imprints, on everybody. Let's bookend that with your most recent concert. What was the most recent concert you saw?
So I went to a Blue Note jazz show, for Valentine's Day. So there was that, although that wasn't, I didn't go for a particular performer. I went to experience some live music, and I'm a big jazz guy, and I wanted to do something kind of romantic. So, and I honestly can't even remember her name. I gotta look her up again. Victory. Her name was Victory. Her last name was Victory. Um, but I can tell you the last show I went to where I had bought a ticket and then had the name of the performer on it looks like that was, well, I took my daughter to see Unforgettable Fire, the U2 cover band in Montclair.
Nice. Hey, every concert is a concert. No, I was in a cover band, so I don't have any complaints about any concert.
And even,
How was that?
I mean, it's funny. It was actually a Coldplay cover band that was the opener. I think they were called Fix It or Fix Me. Um,
Fix Me.
it's good to see that kind of music live. And U2 is not necessarily an easy band to go catch around the corners. And my daughter's been obsessed with the band for a long time, so it was beautiful to see her get to experience that. I thought they did a great job with it. And then the band that I went to go see on my own before that was J-Rad, Joe Russo's Almost Dead, which is another cover
Mhm.
band, really. I mean, they're absolutely
Tribute band, almost
they're
talented.
amazing. I mean, I
Yeah.
might say they're the greatest cover band of all time.
Whoa. That's putting down the, gauntlet there. What's the longest concert you ever saw? Now, I assume you're gonna tell me it's Fish because for me, it's Fish.
Sure. They
At New Year's Eve, Fish shows tend to go a very long time.
they play 3 sets on New Year's Eve, and
Right.
each set being, an hour to 80 minutes, 90 minutes sometimes. I've seen a few 3-set shows, festivals and New Year's Eve performances, Halloween performances. So one in Amsterdam, just because they kind of wanted to keep playing. But I think the
Mhm,
longest show that I ever saw them do was the New Year's performance from 1999 to 2000 in Big Cypress, Seminole
mhm.
Indian Reservation for the millennium. And they came out, I want to say 15 minutes until midnight and played until sunrise. And they didn't, there was no sets. It was just 6 or 7 hours or
Right.
something of nonstop.
That's one it got to be one of the longest popular music concerts ever. It's incredible.
That was definitely before Trey found sobriety.
And what was the shortest concert you ever seen? Have you ever been in a concert where the musician storms off or, anything like that, or they have technical difficulties and cancel the show after they started?
Yeah, I was a freshman in college, and I went to go see one of my favorite bands at the time, Green Day, perform a public show in Boston, the Hatch Shell, right on the Esplanade along the Charles River, and a free show at the height of this band's popularity. And they've got a bit of a punk element. Anyway, I think the show lasted about 20 minutes. and there was things being thrown and there was just absolute chaos, and they called it and they said, "We're done here.
Yeah.
Take it easy, everybody."
It's funny, I feel like they both encouraged that and then got sick of it really quick. Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl always told a story about after the first record, they went out on tour and everyone threw Mentos at them because of the first video they did. And then after a while, it got to the point of just total torture.
But I would like to think of this award as some sort of closure. Some stop blowing Mentos at us at our shows. That's what I'm trying to say.
But I can imagine Green Day could get pretty wild with those early crowds, especially at the Dookie record, and those
Mhm.
first two records were pretty younger crowds of wild kids, and punk wasn't really reestablished yet in the mainstream, and they were really right there and bringing it back. So I can imagine that would have been a little wild.
And we talk about the cost of concerts, and the idea of a free show is beautiful, but it's a double-edged sword.
Right. I think that the price actually keeps people in line nowadays. No one wants to get out of a show they paid $400 for the ticket for.
Yeah.
So, of all the shows you've seen, do you have a favorite concert? Is there a way to quantify a favorite concert? And you can take that word and interpret it however you'd like. But what's your favorite concert that you've ever seen?
Oh, that's such a tough question. I guess, I mean, there's recency bias, right? I mean, a couple months back,
Sure.
I saw Gregory Alan Isaacoff at King's Theater with my daughter, and it was a beautiful, magical show, especially sharing live music with my daughter. But usually my go-to answer for that question is Warfield Theater, April 1999. Phil Lesh is, uh, he has just had a liver transplant. He was basically on death's door after a lifetime of abuse, for sure. And he had a liver transplant and he got a second lease on life. And here we are almost 25 years later. He's actually playing tonight at the Capitol Theater.
Hmm.
Um,
Right down the road from me.
my brother's going. I was thinking about it, but tickets are over $200. So I'm going to pass on
Yeah.
that. But I flew out to California for the Warfield Theater. He played a 3-night run. I saw 2 of the 3 nights. Very small theater for Phil. And I loved that, it was again, sort of a newfound lease on life. And he was joined by a few incredible musicians. So for me, at the time, completely immersed in the Phish world, always in love with the Grateful Dead. His Phil and Friends lineup included Trey Anastasio and Paige McConnell from Phish,
Mhm.
John Molo on drums, and also Steve Kimmock on guitar, who
Mm.
just adds an incredibly beautiful sound to the mix. And those shows are just absolutely legendary. They still hold up 25 years on.
Was that his first Phil and Friends shows?
I think he might have had a few before then, just that was kind of his name for when he's playing with some other randos, but
Right.
it was the first Phil and Friends with a PH, Phil and
Mhm.
Friends.
Right.
So just seeing
Well,
those two
if
worlds.
half of Fish is there, that makes
Exactly.
sense too.
And having,
Yeah.
having the mix of those two bands kind of come together, mostly Dead songs, a couple of Phish songs, a lot of Dylan. It was just absolute pure heaven.
Oh, that sounds great. Now, what's the best live act you've ever seen? Is it same as that Phil and Friends show, or what's the best live act? I mean, oftentimes the best live act is not a person's favorite show because a favorite show has something unique about it, like what you just described. But the best live act is a little more.
Yeah, I am also a huge fan of Yola Tango, and they're
Mhm.
not for everybody, but they're very much for me. And I have seen them for about 20 odd years, and in all sorts of different venues and different performances. And I just am always blown away by their ability to stir something in me and inspire me. So yeah, I'd say they're my favorite act, my favorite live
Cool.
act, even if you're right, it's a different question.
Yeah. What's the most disappointing concert you've ever seen? Have you ever gone to a show with high expectations and left saying, "Oh my god,
Mm.
that was not what I wanted"?
Yeah, that's happened a few times. It's always sad when you leave a show feeling like you like the band and the music less than
Mhm.
when you walked in. Um, I know my brother took me to a birthday show. We joke about it still. It was in the early days of Rat Dog, and I guess I didn't realize that
Ugh.
the part of the Grateful Dead I loved was not the Bob Weir part of it. And this was, 96 or 97. So it was, shortly after the death. And I will say that, Bobby has come a long way, and I've seen, afterwards where it's been lovely, but that show was really sad, especially, it was packed, absolutely packed and expensive. And it was not the best show I'd seen.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, I mean, 96, you said?
Yeah, maybe 97. So one of those.
Right. So, Jerry's death was still raw, I'm
Mhm.
sure, and that must have been hard.
Mhm.
What's the most pleasant surprise? Have you ever gone to a show where you didn't know the band and you walked away saying, wow, that was amazing?
Yeah. It certainly happened with Yola Tango. Did not expect to be so blown away.
First time, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. The first time I saw them, they were doing a concert called The Sounds of Science. And they were creating the soundtrack to an underwater film, basically a predecessor to Jacques Cousteau. And you're watching a film and they're just creating the music for it. And I haven't looked back since. But I think my biggest, most pleasant surprise as a live music junkie is that my daughter has good taste in music and has taken me to shows that have been beautiful experiences as well.
Oh, that's great. Have you ever been at a show where a guest performer came out? And if so, I can't imagine you haven't, seeing as many Phish shows that you've seen. But guest performers, do you have a favorite unannounced guest performer experience?
Yeah, that was always fun for Phish. Jay-Z came out in Brooklyn.
I was there too.
That was pretty fun.
That was great.
That was a good time. Big Pimpin' on the floor.
Big Pimpin' and 99 Problems, both of them.
And the one thing about Phish is, in hindsight, they don't really have a lead. I mean, they don't really have a singer, like a real singer, a real front man. And it's fun to see that. I was there when Kid Rock came out in Las Vegas, and not saying I'm a huge Kid Rock fan, but boy, was that fun.
Yeah, they make it fun because they're so amped up. I wasn't hanging out with them backstage because they didn't let anyone backstage that night because, as we found out why, because Jay-Z was there. They were super amped about it. They loved how that went down. And honestly, that show, that it was at Keyspan Park in Brooklyn out on Coney Island, the place erupted, and every Phish fan knew every word to both of those songs. And it was, Jay-Z seemed pretty thrilled by it and excited by how into it the Phish crowd was.
And man, you guys is hiding all this, huh? And it's hiding all this from me. I felt it. I felt it. Yeah.
And then I was talking briefly about my daughter's live music experience. I took her to her first show. She actually liked this singer-songwriter named Biba Doobie, and Biba Doobie was opening for the Bleachers at Radio City Music Hall. We went for Biba Doobie. Bleachers were incredible, and your friend Bruce Springsteen came out. So that's a good way to, there we go. So that
was a good show. I saw the video of his song that he recorded with the Bleachers, and it was great.
Yeah,
recording.
and the Bleachers are a great band. So that was, and also, I like to kind of have a checklist. I want to be able to say I've seen all these different artists, and that was my first time ever seeing Bruce. So I can at least say I've caught that, although maybe one day we'll catch a full show together.
Oh, I think we're going to this year because we don't have a lot more chances after that. If he waits another 7 years, that'll be the end. So we'll go this year. I'll figure it out and we'll go to Philly. Let's switch over to venues. Do you have a favorite concert venue?
So I think that there's two different ways to look at it. I think indoor and outdoor are very different experiences. And I think there's something wonderful about being on the ocean, on Jones Beach. There's something beautiful and majestic about being at Red Rocks. It's really hard to argue with that. You're talking about a big open, indoor space. I still love MSG. I love the sound. I like the experience. I like the convenience. But I think when I asked myself my favorite venue of all time, it used to be Radio City Music Hall, just for the sheer elegance of it. But I do love those old theaters. And I think what Brooklyn has done with the King's Theater is really, really magnificent too.
Mm. Yeah, I haven't been there, but it looks gorgeous. Really nice renovation there. Nice. What's your least favorite concert venue?
Shout out to Roseland, who no longer here.
Oh, I loved Roseland. You didn't like Roseland?
I mean, I liked it once I figured out how to scan my way up to the balcony in the VIP section, and then it was wonderful.
Yeah.
But until that,
The roller rink downstairs wasn't so great.
it was just so big and so cramped. And I guess there are other venues that have that layout, whether it's Terminal 5 or Brooklyn Steel, where, you're either, in the thick of it, or you're like way, way, way off to the side where you can't see or hear anything. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's great if you're in it, if you're like really, really fully involved, but it's just a bit of a madhouse.
Right on. Now, what venue have you seen the most shows at?
Gotta be MSG. Gotta be. I mean, it started there. I think Phish has played there like 70 or 80 times now. I've probably seen 50 or 60 of them. And, I've kind of stopped. I see them like once a tour or so, and I'm very happy with that.
Right.
But I like MSG.
Me too. Just love it. And I've seen about 50 shows there as well and just adore it. I mean, I get it's not the best sound, and the smaller you get, as venues go, you have a chance of getting really good sound, but some small venues have terrible sound. I mean, Irving Plaza is deafening. They don't know how to moderate the sound, and so you go in there for a rock show and you get crushed by the sound. At Madison Square Garden, it's always good. It's not the best, but it's not bad at all. Love it. Now, overall, if you had to see a show only in one type of venue, club, theater, arena, festival, stadium, amphitheater, what's your favorite place to see a show?
I love being able to get up close, and not every venue allows for that, including MSG. I even miss the old days of Yankee Stadium where you could just more easily sneak your way down. I think I do love the Bowery ballrooms where you're allowed to get there early. You want to stake out a spot.
Right.
You want to have that experience, because it does change the experience, whether you're stuck in the back or forced all the way up front. So I guess if I had to choose a venue, Bowery is beautiful.
Yeah, great room. I always like to ask a little bit about recorded live music, which is an oxymoron maybe in some way. What's your favorite live song? I
Yeah.
should say.
Well, since we were just talking about those Phil and Friends from '99, I've kind of been hearing those songs in my head. And for me, that was the introduction to a lot of those songs. And I guess the one that keeps, can I say Help Slip Franklin's Tower? Can I say that as one song?
Sure. Of course.
There we go. Right. Help Slip Franklin's Tower. And I'm just because of, it was also incredibly special, not only for where Phil was in his life, but for me flying across the country to see my brother and be with him when he was living in the Bay Area.
Mhm.
Again, we can pretend that we want to try to disconnect the music from the personal experience, but they're very much intertwined.
Right. This whole podcast is about making sure that connection is front and center. So I'm all about that. Favorite live album? Do you have one?
I went years not really getting the Dead. I didn't really understand what it was all about. I heard some of their studio stuff and wasn't really thrilled. I mean, some of it I thought was
Right.
just downright like not good. Operator, can you tell me? Tell me. So, yeah, okay. This is what people are like going on tour for. But one from the Vault just gets it right. It's just
Right on.
perfect note for note.
Yeah. And then favorite concert film? Do you have one? And if so, what is it? I'd love to make sure I've seen it.
I don't really. I'm trying to think. It's a good question. I might have to come back to that. I don't know. I mean, as a fellow Dylan file, I guess we can. Not so much. It's not a concert film, but Don't Look Back.
Oh, yes, it is.
Okay, Don't Look Back.
Don't Look Back is great. I mean, you get to see him at the height of his early power.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And then what that film does in terms of telling a story, where we are in in history, where the change in music. So yeah, let's go with Don't Look Back.
Not a bad choice at all. Love it.
Mm.
Now, just for fun, do you have any outrageous things you've ever seen or even done at a concert before? I mean, a lot of Phish shows, I've seen, lots of people taking hits of whatever and then passing out right there and face planting in the parking lot. And while that seems perverse, I always found that funny.
Even though I've seen 200 Phish shows, I'd like to say I'm really, I've always been able to be sober at shows and enjoy my experience. So I'm proud to say I've never done the passing out on my face. No judgment to those who have, but
No, no,
um,
no. It's just funny. I find it funny
um,
putting yourself through that kind of torture afterwards
but yeah, I guess
from a whippet.
I've definitely, snuck in and gone backstage and had those kinds of experiences.
Let's hear that story. There's a statute of limitations. I'm sure it's over.
I wanted to share this experience with you because I think when I think back on my live music days, this is the one story that I love just because of where I was in this moment and all the things going on with it. I was at Roseland, and this was February 24th, 1995. It was Dave Matthews Band. Now,
I was there.
you were there. You were at that show too.
Yep. It was right before my birthday. I was there.
And
Yeah,
and
that's okay.
I don't know that we ever talked about that we were at the same show because
Yeah.
at the time,
I mean, I don't really talk about Dave Matthews Band shows a lot, but that was early Dave Matthews, and I was going to check it out.
I had just discovered Dave and I was really enjoying his music, but I was there at the show representing my other two favorite bands. So I had a Phish shirt from Junta, and I had a baseball cap that was the Blues Travelers logo because I was big into Blues Traveler. And I had also, just seen Phish for the first time on New Year's Eve, rather that was Boston Garden with my brother.
Yep.
And I was representing Phish. And then on a personal note, I was a freshman at college and I kind of lost my way a little bit. I got mixed up with some people that really were not good folks. And then I decided I would try to go to a fraternity because maybe you could meet some good people there. My brother was in a frat. It seemed like a nice place to go. And after I was in the frat for a month or two, and then there was some big event at the frat house, and they said everyone had to be there. I said, well, I'm not going to be there because I'm going to this concert. I was in Boston, had to go down to New York City for the show. And they said, well, Russ, you can't blow off this event. This is important. You gotta make a decision. So I made the decision and I unpledged to the fraternity and went down to the show, and front and center, Blues Traveler hat, Phish shirt, and Dave is playing on stage. And from the front of the stage, I can look over and see on the side of the stage, Trey Anastasio waiting in the wings, waiting for his turn. And I'm losing my mind. And then I look over on the other side and I see John Popper, and they're on opposite sides. And I'm the only one that is seeing this because you could either,
Yep.
Maybe you saw one, but I had that one spot and I knew what was about to go down. And they came out for the next song and they played all along the Watchtowers.
We want to bring a couple more friends back up here there because we have such a good time. We're going to jam a little bit. The straight from a fish.
So, Dylan
Yep.
with members of Phish and Blues Traveler and Dave Matthews, absolutely fire. And then at the end of it, Popper throws his harmonica into the crowd to me because
Good.
clearly,
Is it your hat? I hope.
he must have just seen a dude losing his mind. And I remember dropping it. It hit off my fingers and I dropped it into this packed sea at Roseland where we're just, it's complete sardines, even in the best of scenarios. And here with all that was going on, we were all packed. And I just decided, split second, I'm going to go down and I'm going to find this thing. And I just dive in, I'm under the sea of people, and I remember grabbing something, and it was a cup. It was like a beer cup, and it took a long time. I can still remember the process that I'm freaking out. Anyway, I find it, I grab it, and then I remember someone telling me a story once where these things are so in demand that someone had his stolen because he had gotten the Blues Traveler harmonica. Anyway, I stood up with the harmonica in my hand and I screamed, "Who has the harmonica?" And then I ran, and then I all the
Oh,
way to the back of the
okay.
venue as the guests left the stage, and I was like shaking, and I still have my harmonica from that night.
Well, I am very glad that you didn't get kicked in the face while you were doing that.
So cool that you were there, man.
Yeah. I wasn't in the front though, I promise I was in the back. I didn't want it that bad, and my mind was blown too when they came out. Have you ever hung out, backstage at a show with the musicians?
Yep, I finally got my Phish backstage experience in Hamburg, Germany on their Europe tour in '96 as I'm a teenager backpacking my way through. I feel only a little bit bad about this, but not that much. There was a car parked out front that had a backstage pass like sticker from the tour on the car. It was clearly from a previous show in the tour, but I just
Mhm.
peeled it off and then used it to get backstage. So I got to meet the members of the band, which was cool. And I'm trying to think of another good,
That's a good one.
yeah, yeah,
Were they nice?
yeah, absolutely. I think I had a nice long conversation with Paige. I didn't really talk to Fishman too much. I think he was trying to hit on some girl. I didn't want to be in.
Yeah, he's
Well,
hard to talk to backstage. I mean, I spent many nights backstage, and he was the one that acknowledged me the
yeah,
least. After a point, all the people from Vermont got to be known. You know, you weren't friends with the guys, but I knew Trey pretty well. But Paige and Mike at least recognized me and acknowledged me. Fish never did. That's a good one. So I have a couple of questions about your bucket list because this is the meat of it for me. You've talked about a bunch of things that you have done. What concert venue would you like to go see a show at, but you haven't yet? What's left for you? You've hit my number one, which is Red Rocks. I've never been. I'm really anxious to go. So where is a venue you would love to see a show that you haven't yet?
well, I think that in hindsight, all those experiences I had with Fish was, it was certainly, I enjoyed the music. I certainly danced all night long and I made a lot of friends along the way, but I loved the travels. I love the experience of going to new places. And that continues to be, a motivator for me. And so for me, it's about picking the next experience and seeking that out. I just had my first Berkeley Greek experience, just flying out there to see Khruangbin, right? I wanted to have that show. Um, I never saw a show at the Gorge, so that seems, but I feel like I'm a little old for like camping and I don't know. But
I do too. I wouldn't do that anymore.
um, but I think if I'm gonna see a show, I want it to be international. I want to travel. I want to go to a new country and see a music venue. Sorry, my cat just jumped on my lap. Trying to think if there's a great bucket list international venue. Um, I mean,
We'll figure one out.
London, Paris. I don't know. What are the best music venues in the world, right? Outside of the US, what are the great ones? Maybe Royal Albert Hall.
I don't yeah, I would think that that is a pretty good one, or the O2 Arena now in London is good. Um, but Royal Albert Hall would be a nice one for sure. I don't think I'd ever wanna go see a show at a soccer stadium, a football
Mhm.
stadium in Europe because those are just too big.
Yeah,
Um,
they're not intended for music. I've
no,
seen a couple of those, and that's not the experience that I think us music snobs seek.
right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a great answer for you. I mean, maybe it would be cool to see a show at the Cavern Club. I don't know. I don't have an idea if that's good or not anymore, or if it's even a place that has shows with new bands. I don't know.
Right.
I have not seen a lot of shows overseas. In fact, maybe in the single digits. And they were bigger shows like Hyde Park shows and things like that.
Yeah, that's the draw for me. That's what I want to see next. I want to see, live music in different cities in different countries. I mean, I did see Phish in 10 different countries, so, it was always
Wow.
about traveling and getting to experience those other cultures. Trying to think I don't know. I gotta find a venue that I wanna go seek and then make that the next big experience.
Note to self. Good. If you could see any musician perform, living or dead, who would it be?
Hmm. So I have two beautiful framed portraits in my living room, both from the photographer Elliot Landy, and one is Dylan in 1968, and one is Jimmy in 1968, and very different styles, both
Hmm.
playing in New York. One's in Woodstock, one's in the Fillmore East. But I would love to experience the magic of his guitar playing in person and feel that energy. Yeah, only that fire only burned for a brief moment in time. But if I had a chance,
Yep. That is one of the for our generation who couldn't have seen him live. Um, I mean, I was 3 when he died. Um, that's the answer for me too. I mean, that's just he's such an influential performer in essentially 3 albums in 4
yeah.
years.
And
Again?
such a legacy, even over
Yeah.
50 years now he's been gone, and he still holds this incredible place in my
Yeah.
music history.
So influential, for sure. If you could meet any musician, who would it be and why?
It's tough. I think you and I are both big Dylan fans, and I don't know. I can tell you, I don't want to meet him. I don't really want to sit down and have a conversation. I, I've learned to really separate the performers, the artists, from my personal connections, and I don't know. I feel like if you can meet somebody and they're human and they're flawed, and then all of a sudden the art doesn't have the same look to it. So, the days of me dying to get backstage and hoping to meet various musicians, I'm happy just to kind of head home after a show.
Right
I don't
on.
know. I don't. There's not really anybody that I would want to, and I think that's a lame answer, but I'm happy.
No, that's fine. There are no lame answers here. It's funny, when I was a kid, I met a lot of people through my aunts, and, I kept it to just hi. There
Mhm.
was no conversation because I agree with you. I was young and I knew I didn't have anything to add. So it was, "Hi, great to meet you. Thanks for having me. I love the show," if it was after the show. And I met the Stones and Springsteen and Van Halen all at their own shows, and it was something. It was heady stuff for a young kid. But I kept it to the absolute minimum. And then with Fish, I hung out with them so much that it was, I'd hang out with Trey's wife or, his mom and backstage and not get involved with Trey while he's performing because that's not what he wants and needs. But I did go out to dinner with him and Stuart Copeland before an Oysterhead show at Roseland, and that was pretty good. That was fun. They treated me like a normal person for the most part. So it's not so bad to meet your heroes as long as you keep it in context. What are you doing next concert wise? Any shows coming up that you already have tickets for?
They just announced what's called the Outlaw Music Festival,
Yep.
and I I keep seeing Dylan. I keep catching his shows. Um, I saw him in Montreal in the fall, and then in New Jersey. I'm sorry we missed that show together.
Yeah, we were supposed to go together. I still regret that.
Oh, so he's touring again, and this time he's doing his tour with Willie Nelson
Right.
and Robert Plant and Alison Krauss as part of that tour too. Anyway, I have not seen Willie. He's 91 years young. Bought bought tickets June 29th at Jones Beach, and the idea
Nice.
then is after the show, walk home to Fire Island. It's a five
Oh,
five
very
mile trek
nice.
on the beach, but the ferries don't run. So your choices are either $250 water taxi, or 5 mile walk on the beach, or don't go.
Which isn't bad. And do you have any shows you haven't bought tickets for yet, but you're looking forward to seeing?
Um,
A lot of people touring this
Yeah,
year.
tell me. I've been a little bit out of the loop and just kind of got my head down trying to raise two teenagers, trying to run this business. And I have not been quite as involved. Just often it's like I'll see a show, but it's a Tuesday and I've got something to do with the kids.
Right.
And right now I'm just kind of leaning in at this time in my life while I got them for just a couple more years. Um,
Good idea.
but maybe you and I should look at some lineups and tell me what, let's go.
Yeah, I have some ideas, so I'll share some with you. Before we
Hmm.
go, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about your business. I did a very basic intro, but tell us a little bit more about News-O-Matic and what it's all about. And I know you've been doing it really since the beginning, or almost the beginning, and it's a big part of your life. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that and share that with the audience.
Well, I'll do you even better, Alex. I'll explain how I ended up in this business through music, which is the fact that when I was going to see Dave Matthews and Phish as a freshman and a sophomore in college, I was studying engineering, mostly because I was good at math, but didn't really have any aptitude or enjoyment for engineering at all. And I'm at a concert at the Orpheum Theater in Boston in '95, and I'm there by myself because I was that much into music. I would just go to shows, and I just could not stop reflecting on the fact that I hated what I was studying and I did not want to do it. And I just asked myself, what do I want to do? And I knew I wanted to keep seeing live music. And I said, how can I make live music part of my life, the focus of my life, given that I have no musical talent, playing an instrument or singing?
By the way, you do have musical talent. You're a pretty good guitar
Thank you,
player.
sir. Thank you.
Don't sell yourself short.
Okay. I was not gonna quit my day job to play
Right. Understood.
botched Bob Dylan covers. Um,
Yeah.
and I said, well, there are people who go to shows and they get to write about it, and I guess that's a career. You could be a music journalist. Well, how do you do that? You study journalism, and so for the next couple of years, I switched my major from mechanical engineering to print journalism. I started working at the Boston University newspaper, trying to cover concerts. I remember I got a free ticket to a Phish show to write a review about it. That was like a really exciting moment in my life. Like, I got a free ticket.
This is gold, Jerry.
And I studied abroad in my junior year down in Sydney, Australia. And I interned for Rolling Stone when I was there.
Rolling Stone,
Rolling
Australia.
Stone, Australia, but still Rolling Stone. And that's where I got my first
Right on.
byline. I was going to concerts and talking to the people and really was in that world. And actually, here's a cool side story. One of my journalism projects for school was interview a journalist who's in the field you want to work in. And I remember contacting like 30 journalists, and 29 of them ignored me, including like all the local at the Boston Phoenix. Like people were just not responding anywhere. And I got a call out of the blue from John Perales from the New York Times.
Wow.
And he was a big guy in his field even 25 plus years ago. And we had a nice chat. And I remember him saying, like, he kind of cautioned me. He's like, you might not want to do this as your career because it can disrupt what you love. And
It becomes work
Right.
instead of
right.
passion.
But the beautiful part of this is that I continue to do music journalism. We write about, certainly we write about, the Taylor Swift tour because that's incredible through News-O-Matic, but also we've done all sorts of different stories about music. And, there was a period there where every one of the Beatles albums were turning 50. And so we would be writing articles about those albums for kids that many of them have never even heard of the Beatles. I remember we got to interview we interviewed people who worked on the albums in different ways 50 years later. We're not just doing music, but it's part of what I'm doing to be a storyteller for children. But it's music, it's sports, it's arts, it's government, civics, and culture. Any stories that we think are interesting that kids should learn about, and that includes music. But it all because of live music. Like that actually led me on the path here to be this storyteller. And we've been now publishing for coming up on our 3,000th consecutive edition. So 12 odd years of storytelling every single day, new stories, been the journey of a lifetime. And I'm excited to keep that going.
Well, I hope you do. Russ, thanks so much for your time today. I really enjoyed going through your live musical history, and we will find a show to see together this year. So I look forward to that, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks for our baseball auction.
We have a lot to discuss still, my friend. Thank you so much for thinking of me and
Yes.
for reaching out.
Really glad you joined us. And that's it for today's conversation. Thank you for joining us as well. We'll be back next Tuesday. And if you like what you heard today, we'd appreciate it if you like and either subscribe or follow to make sure you get notified about every new episode. And please tell your friends. Additionally, I want to know what you think. Please leave us a comment and we'll try to respond to every one of them. The Rock and Roll Show podcast is a World Highway Media production. I'm your host, Alex Gadd. And until next time, take care of yourself and each other.